Welcome back, everyone. We are outside of Roswell, New Mexico tonight, and it is 7 o'clock Eastern Time, but it is 3 p.m. Hawaii time. And so we often don't think about the time change that drastically, but there is, in fact, a 6 hour differential across our nation, and you might imagine that can affect the economy pretty substantially. We're waiting for our guest to come on today. It may take just a couple extra seconds because there is a lag in time given the distance. But I thought I would just first recap a little bit about what it is that we've been seeing around the country. One of the questions that came up when I was on the interview with Prescott, Arizona TV, Prescott E News to be specific, was the economy is doing great. So what is it that you want to change? And of course, my answer was that we don't want to fix what ain't broke, right? So, I mean, for those things that are going well, we want to make sure that they continue. But I can also say that as I've been driving around the nation, I've seen a lot of spaces, a lot of rural places, but also in urban settings where people are really struggling. And particularly today, I drove through several towns where each and every single business was closed. And some of these towns, there were no additional places to get jobs for at least another 20 miles. As gas prices increase, and I've certainly been feeling the pinch on that as we near about $200 just to fill the tank for the RV. So it's really substantial. It's pretty much doubled in the last 4 months since we started. I wonder how it is that these individuals are able to continue to find work and continue to be able to take care of their families. I frankly don't see how reasonably they can and stay in these small towns, and yet how do you move when you have no additional starting point, no additional money to get an apartment somewhere else? So the challenges begin to mount, and the struggles, I think, become very significant. So it behooves me to be asking more questions. What we're putting into the economic strategy is not just the typical numbers that we look at, right? It's not just about taxes. It's not just about employment rates or the stock market. It's about people. It's about people in our nation being able to live, and it's about ensuring that we are able to get from our people the brilliance that they can contribute across our society. And we're not getting that when we don't have a modernized education system. We're not preparing our citizens for the future when we're failing to think about all citizens and their capabilities. So it's been tremendously moving to drive through these towns and to see the reality of what's really happening. All right, our guest has just said it may take just a few extra seconds for her to get on tonight. It is 7 p.m. where I am, and I'm sorry, it's 8 p.m. Eastern time. Hello.
Hi, JJ. Sorry about
Hi.
that.
No, no worries. It can always take us a little extra time. I just realized I misspoke though. I was thinking it's 7 p.m. Eastern. It's 9 p.m. Eastern time and 3 p.m.
Yipes.
Hawaii.
Yipes.
It's been a lot. Having the distance, and one of the things when I spoke to a company in Hawaii, I said, how much more difficult is it to manage your business given that you are so far off the time zones? It is really challenging. The one thing I loved though is I'm an early person, so I normally start my day at 2 a.m., but that's 2 a.m. Eastern time, so that was like the middle of the night in Hawaii. And so when I adjusted to 2 a.m. Hawaii time, I was starting right when everyone else on the East Coast was, and I was able to finish by like noon. So
Noon.
you have the
Right.
rest of the day. So there's some real benefits too, I think, at least for,
Productivity.
yes, yes, yes. So I would love to pass it over to you and tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and we'll take it from there.
Sure, sure. My name is Esther Gabriel. I'm a student here at the University of Hawaii. I'm actually on campus at the moment in between classes. So excuse me. I've been in the private banking, wealth management space for about 15 years now, and I've decided to go back to school, get into the law program. because I've noticed that it's what I need to better service and better help my clients going forward.
So, what I love about that statement is we've been really pushing the concept of lifelong learning.
Right.
And what we are finding, or what Harvard is starting to tell us, is 3 to 6 careers the
Mm.
young people will be having. And you're a great demonstration of someone who, bless you, you look very young. So, I would not have said 15 years. So, when you start with, I'm a student, the first assumption is, okay, this is a young person. Then you follow up with, but I've been working in this industry for 15 years, and now I
Right.
see I need to expand it.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about what you've seen as changes or trends in this industry that led you to say, I need to go back and get some more formal education.
Right. So working in Silicon Valley for the last, I would say, 5 years, and seeing the amount of wealth, the amount
Mm-hmm.
of global wealth that is housed there or wanting to be housed there, right? And the
Right.
inability to really help our clients do good things with the wealth, right? So if you look at some of the statistics, and I'm a mathematician, so we love our numbers, but I will avoid giving all the numbers, but I'll
We
give
like numbers here.
I'll give general numbers. So I just pulled up some of the data, and if you look at the global wealth, right? So we've grown as a global economy. Last year, I think, what was it, $14 trillion in 2018, about 4.6%. The United States alone had about 6.5%, right? We're the dominant leader there. So if you look at that growth, and here in the United States, we've had growth since 2008, right? Obviously, I'm talking from an economic perspective, right? We've had economic growth. Um, what are we doing with that wealth? What's happening to it, right? And if we look around us and we pull another fun fact from the UN, that 1 in 9 people is undernourished, right? But hunger statistics are there. If we look at climate change, right? I'm in the Pacific. I'm from Fiji, right? When we look at our one Oceania, if we take a step back and look at the world as one ocean, right? This impacts us all. So, how are we utilizing this great wealth that we've somehow managed to acquire, right, through various things in the economy, right? But we have this wealth. How are we better leveraging it to impact countries? Um, we're a great country here in the United States. We're a big player, right? But what about the little ones, right? What's going on there? And then if I take it, even peel it a little further and say, well, how are we impacting individual human beings, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all human beings working hard, trying to do better, trying to do good things. There are people in this world with a lot of money, right? Who a lot of wealth. There's a lot of wealth out there. And I think a lot of times we rely on government programs to help us, right? And we say, well, these problems exist because the governments aren't solving them for us, right? Um, I've learned as I've been back in school, um, I've learned that, sometimes sometimes government legislation is more powerful in solving problems than governments doing it or handing out the money, right? Um, if we look at China, for example, right, and I'm certainly no expert in China, I'm just taking a class, right?
Right.
But if we look at China, and they had where's my statistic on China? They had it's no secret, they've had such tremendous growth in the last 20 years, right? Everybody knows this.
Mm-hmm.
But what was that a result of, right? That was a result of government saying, okay, people out there in the rural sectors, we give you this land, you do with it as you please. And it instilled a spirit of entrepreneurship, right? And that spirit just created this wealth that is so prevalent today, right? So now if we take that concept of inspiring entrepreneurship at a very basic level,
Mm-hmm.
right? I believe we can then grow wealth, transform that wealth through foundations to do big projects. It's all through the private sector, right? But it starts with the legislation, right? It starts there.
So I couldn't love what you're saying more. My whole hypothesis for this trip was that we have all the assets and
Mm-hmm.
capabilities we need in this country.
We
We
do.
just need an architect to connect
Right.
them.
Correct.
And too often, what we do in our legislative branch is say the way we solve problems is applying more taxpayer dollars.
Right.
In the executive branch, we solve problems changing those answers every administration and by single groups.
Correct.
So
Correct.
when I was in government, we wrote the U.S. the blueprint for the future of the U.S. education system. And when I took it to my boss in the Pentagon, he says, "JJ, this is fantastic. We love it, but here's the problem." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, the problem is that if the current administration does not get reelected, the project will continue." I said, turn to page 3, sir. And he said, "Why?" I said, "I want you to look at who contributed to the project. They're all personally funded. They don't need government
Exactly.
dollars. They don't need
Exactly.
anything from us. I just need you to take credit."
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so what I was trying to demonstrate is that we can be a facilitative body
Right.
rather than having to be a
Yes.
regulatory body.
Yes.
When we do
Yes.
that, we accomplish exactly what you've said. But there's one
Exactly.
question. How do you inspire, or how do you determine where that money needs to be spent?
Ah, good question. Um, so in my vision of how things work, right? I imagine a world where we are really one ocean, and money is being able to move freely wherever it makes sense to move. An opportunity zone, right? Not as in the tax opportunity zone, but in a
No.
global opportunity
Yeah.
zone, right? So we're able to move this money freely. And then there's a benefit for these wealthy individuals who are moving their money freely to take those gains and allocate to a project. I believe these projects have to be decided on globally,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's a global initiative. The incentives are global, right? It crosses oceans, it crosses land masses. It allows every person sitting at that table to have an equal and valid opinion of how that money should be spent. I believe today there are many, many, what do you call it? I love the word that you use. I wrote it down because I loved it so much. Um, Wicked problems,
Yes.
right?
That's a
There,
common term in military. Is wicked
right.
problem.
Wicked
It
problems,
means it's
right?
just so complex and
Right.
varied and requires so many different groups to come to the table that,
Correct.
yeah.
Correct. So there are many wicked problems, but I do believe in mentorship. I do believe in entrepreneurship. And I think there are obviously different tiers of problems, right? So there are like the big overarching climate
Right.
change, for example, the big overarching hunger. But I would say that even critically important are our human emotions, right? When we look at mental health, when we look at some of these, I don't want to use the word discarded, but people we've ignored, right? As a participating member of society, how are we saying, okay, you know what? I'm going to hold your hand, and I'm going to help you, and I'm not just going to throw dollars at you, but I'm going to make the resources available to you. I'm going to teach you the way to do it, and I'm going to watch you grow. And through that growth, you're going to then participate in this organization to help somebody else grow, right? So there has to be our overarching, we know what we have to get done to save our earth, right?
Right.
We
Right.
have those things that we have to address. But then we are still human beings. We still need to be loved. We still need to provide for our families. And I think that humanitarian peace, that love piece, needs to permeate all of these decisions that we're making. And working with very wealthy individuals for many, many years, many of them in their heart want to do good things.
Mm-hmm.
They want to give back. They just don't know how to, or are shy to become part of a project because it's not an easily accessible thing.
Mm-mm.
It's something that's kind of a lofty dream, a lofty goal out there in the universe. They know they've made a ton of money, okay, right? And they want to do good things, but no one's connecting those pieces like that says, okay, I have XYZ dollars, and you know what, I believe in helping, you know, children who have been victim of sex trafficking, and I want to inspire these kids to be business owners. Like no one's there holding their hand to get that done.
Yep.
And I mean, like with all of the social issues that we have, they're solvable, and I think we have to believe that.
Yeah, I just aggressively agree, and it's been fascinating. I will direct anyone listening as well as you to watch one of the videos about the individual in Oregon. So he took what I would call the marginalized individuals in our in his community. So these are going to be people who are formerly incarcerated,
Sure,
addicted populations, and those with mental health issues. And also vets that are struggling, oftentimes with
sure.
PTSD in specific. And he started a business and then eventually made it into 15 businesses, and they're all dealing with waste. So they take
Interesting.
waste and use them as assets. It could be trucking, it could be revitalizing mobile home communities, it could be revitalizing mattresses, it could be moving clothing. And what they do is they give you a job, they give you support, and they start you with pre-housing. And there's like 8 to 10 layers you move through until you reach home ownership. They make $50 million a year,
Exactly.
and thousands of people are being serviced and with respect, right? They're
Sure.
not using taxpayer dollars, they're not getting handouts.
Exactly.
They are rising up out of difficult situations. The sad thing is that when I asked him, is anyone from the federal government talking to you? No. Is anyone else in the country doing this? No.
No.
So it was wonderful to find this rich example, but how we get it to scale becomes very challenging. And
Right.
I have thought the same thing you pointed out. There are a number of politicians that are saying we need to control how money moves and we need to control business owners. And it's giving, I've had a lot of behind the closed doors discussions recently, and there's a lot of big business that's getting very concerned. Did we lose you for a minute there? Or did we lose me? Ah, we'll give her a second and see if she gets back on. We've had a bit of a freeze. Sometimes it just snaps back into place, and sometimes there's a true delay. No worries, no worries. Hopefully we'll get her back on in just a minute. So I'll finish my discussion. What what we have found is that there's a lot of concern by business owners that they're being painted in a really negative light, and the concern becomes, is it going to degrade businesses? All right, and we'll go ahead and bring her in again. There we go. There's concern that it'll degrade businesses, but it also, hello.
Hi. Sorry about that.
No, no worries. So we're talking about big business and a number of individuals who have expressed concern that the way that the country is kind of dividing, there
Mm.
is an assumption of haves and have-nots. And the concern is that, number one, that we will reduce the ability of business owners to continue, and two, that we will fail to inspire the entrepreneurship and innovation that drives people to oftentimes literally work their tails off to
Right.
achieve.
Right.
Certainly, we want to make sure that we are getting there in a fair manner. That the we'll say unscrupulous activities that some people will do, because there's bad actors. I always say bad actors exist at every level of socioeconomic status. So yes, there are going to be
Yep.
rich people who are bad actors, but there are also poor people that are, and everything in between. So what we want to be careful about is really labeling anyone who has, as you put it, gained wealth, financial wealth, I should be specific, because there's lots of types of wealth, that we don't
Sure.
paint them negatively, but rather that we help provide opportunities for them to inspire others. So,
Absolutely.
in your experience, what are some of the, I mean, if you could give any stories where you've seen people want to give back or want to get involved, but they've hesitated, and maybe why?
Sure. Um, I would say two or a big, let me go back. So everybody's basic desire, I would say, is to protect their wealth, right? They've worked hard for it. They want to protect their wealth.
Right.
And their wealth is designed to, provide for their family. And this fundamental need is at every level of wealth. The zeros don't matter. Everybody wants to protect it, and they want to be able to have it for their family and future generations. But there comes to be a point at a certain level of wealth where that individual says, you know what, when I was a kid, I used to dream of this, right? I used to dream of, or I experienced this. I had a client once who felt very passionately about somehow having a foundation that looked at children who had been either orphaned at a young age, who had somehow been victims of sex type of activities at an early age, whose youth have been robbed from them, right? Whose
Right.
childhood have been robbed from them, and looking for them, finding them, and saying, "Hey, I care about you, and I want you to be special. I want you to know you're special." and and putting some money behind that to helping that person do something, whether it's go to school, whether it's start a business, whatever it is, but to make that person be seen. So I had a client that was very passionate about setting that up, but when she took a look at it, right, how do you do that? Do you go online, do you Google it, and do you say, what's what? Do you trust that your money is being, you know,
Yep.
taken from one pocket and put into the right pocket on the other end? And what if it's somewhere outside of the United States, right? What if this is a localized event, say in India, or what if this is something that you're passionate about in your home country or country that you visited as a child? What if you're wanting to do things globally? How do you move your money? How do you set up a foundation in another country? How do you do these things without the governments and whatever getting involved and saying, "Hey, bud, you're not allowed to do that," right? So this is the challenge, and this is why I'm studying international law and investment law, is to be able to find a way to move money cross border and do good things. Naturally, every person wants, to be incentivized to do good things. We are human beings, right?
Right.
But at the core, I believe people do good things anyway. They do good things if it's made simple. If it's made simple and the government says, "We got your back, we appreciate you, and by the way, here's an incentive." I think we can really make some changes globally, not just here in our backyard. Of course, that's a priority, but we are a global community. Not everybody living in the United States heritage is from the United States, right? And oftentimes we see this permeate as they become wealthy. They want to give back to where they've come from, but it's almost impossible. It's almost
So,
impossible.
if there were two things that we could do to help these options for people, which really translate to whether it's global or whether it's local.
Right.
What is it that the government could put in place that would facilitate these expenditures, allowing them to, one, target the areas that they want to help,
Yep.
two, be able to facilitate and support direct outcomes that are measurable, and then
Yep.
three, make sure that we're able to bring other people to the table as well that could support, right?
Right.
So some people have the ability to put financial wealth, other people have time wealth, or people have idea wealth,
Exactly.
right? And so
Right. Right.
connecting those people who have the ideas with those people who have the money, with those people that have the time, to me is one of those places where government could be very supportive. And again, it does not cost taxpayers anything, but the
Nothing.
result, both locally and abroad, could be quite positive. So in your mind, what would be, because we do talk a lot about, if you want change, make it easy for
Right.
people to do it. What
Right.
would be two
Right.
things that we could do to help facilitate?
Um, what I would like to see happen, this would be really great, um, is if there was, you know how we have FACTA, right? Everybody, each of the countries report taxes and etc. You know, we are all on the same page for money laundering. You know,
Right.
we all support that. That is not something we want to be, you know, to continue. I think if we can tilt our eyes again, like you say, instead of being so regulatory, but more, you know, say, you know, supportive, we could say, okay, that same system that we use for doing the regulatory piece, why don't we have a communicative piece that says we allow for money to flow within a reasonable means from country to country, to take advantage of opportunities and also to rebuild or to do something excellent or do something great in those local communities, right? There has to be a more defined rubric of how money moves and what is acceptable, right? At the moment, I believe there's a lot of legislation around money moving in for a business perspective,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can move money in, you know, and set up a corporation here. That is not a secret. But there are limitations, et cetera, et cetera. What if the world were to say, okay, we, country A and country B and country C, all the way down, we say money can move, right? As long as it's explainable, it makes sense. As these money moves, along with saying, okay, we're setting up a corporation, if you set up a foundation tied in with your corporation to address, say, this major issue, say, starve hunger or whatever social issue,
Mm-hmm.
if your corporation sets up a sub foundation to fund this, then you get a tax incentive or a tax break moving that money in. A lot of challenges that we see moving money into the United States, for example, is the taxation, right? So it seems a deterrent as well. So if we can say, well, it's coupled with, here's a company coupled with this huge social advocacy program, it's going to do and has a plan to show what they're going to do. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for some leeway in that taxation, but there has to be legislation around that. The second thing that I would love to see is the support in terms of, like you said, some people have the wealth, some people have the time, some people have the heart, right, to do good things. And I would say somehow craft up easy pop-up stations, right? Just pop up a brick and mortar. I'm old school, I'm banking, right? I'm an old school banker at heart, like a brick and mortar, like just set up a pop-up, because sometimes in this digital age with everything becomes so theoretical, right? Like, oh, what we can do this and cross-border and this and this. But nothing is more powerful than walking into a brick and mortar and that's set up for XYZ Foundation, and I want to be a part of your foundation. This is what I have to give you, right? And whatever that is, right? And so I think there has to be a dual. There has to be one on the top level where we're doing things globally with our global partnerships, and a brick and mortar at the local level. And I think we can do big things.
I love it. I love it. So one of the things so each month we focus on a particular topic area, and the month focused on military. What
Mm.
was fascinating, I've worked in this industry a long time, so certainly I was able to connect to a lot of folks that work everything from research to boots on the ground. But what we ended up writing instead of a national military strategy was a national service strategy. Because what we
Right.
recognized was that actually our military strategies that exist are rather deep, effective, and focused. And so there wasn't as much needed for change in that perspective as much as there was a recognition that we need to see service as something that we all do. But the
Right.
problem that we have with service right now is that we don't have that structure, that organization that you're talking about. And so it becomes difficult for people to participate and recognize the value that they're providing. We
Right.
see, as I'm going around the country, when I'm on the airplane, they ask for a couple bucks. When I'm at the grocery stores, in fact, this happened yesterday. Someone asked for $1, and the guy in front of me gave this big, long discussion about how he wasn't sure he wanted to give $1 because probably somebody was going to use it for something that wasn't going to be what he
Right.
intended, and he was going to perpetuate the cycle of poverty, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, I had to buy my groceries, so I was like, I'll give you the $1 to keep moving. But it
Right.
illustrates the point that we have not recognized everybody has something to give and made it coordinated in a way that would be beneficial.
Right.
I think a lot about our folks on the border, and
Mm.
I wish that I could get into the actual depth of what's happening there. Since I come out of government, I have some inside information and expectations of problems, but it keeps coming back to me. We have all these people that would love to be able to help. Why aren't we orchestrating their
Right.
help? If it's the
Right.
case that we don't have money and we don't have time and we don't have people, we don't have resources, we don't have water and we don't have help and we don't have huggers for children, we
Right.
have people who would love to participate in that.
Right.
Um, Even recognizing, yes, that people come into this country illegally and that's not the way that we want them to do that, but they're still human beings.
Sure.
There is
Sure.
still a
Sure.
humane way to handle people.
Sure. Sure.
So this idea of service, whether it's time, money, or heart, and I like that three, I'm going to hold on to it. I think we could do a lot better job, and I think we would maneuver resources in a positive way, um,
Exactly.
and it would cost almost no money at all because
Nothing.
it already
Nothing.
exists. You're talking
Yes.
maybe one federal workers
Yes.
to coordinate it.
Yeah.
I
It,
mean
it
that
exists. The
it.
money is there. The people are there. We just need the leadership. Yeah.
I love it. And we will end on that because that is an exclamation point at the end. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been a
Thank
fantastic
you.
conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Likewise.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye bye.